No, Your Honor, it's Dobie Maxwell. What's the J for? Genius.
That's not a good video. Very funny. Wayne Russell, everybody.
Welcome to the Open Mic Pain with Anthony and Wayne podcast.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Open Mic Pain with, well, it's not Anthony and Wayne, but we'll get to that. Before we get too far, I want to welcome our guest. You've seen him before on Open Mic Pain. He just filmed his first dry bar special. He is the creator of the Maxwell method of comedy. Dobie Maxwell, how are you, sir?
Greetings, salutations. Thanks for having me back. It was a treat last time, and sometimes I tend to get real for people, and they don't want to ever talk to me again. But the fact that you guys returned my email, I'm very flattered. Thank you.
We already have the next few episodes with you, going around in
Anytime.
our head, so.
I love it.
Anthony had a nice opportunity tonight to host a show, so he's doing that tonight.
Great.
So I really needed somebody to hop on board and be able to berate me and make me feel like less than like usual. So I brought my very good friend, co-host of the Carnival Personell Podcast, Jaques Lambert. Jaques, how are you?
Wayne, I would never berate you because the ass-kicking the Lord Jesus Christ has already bestowed upon you. And that's coming from an atheist, so I will not say anything disparaging to you, you sausage casing full of bullshit and chlamydia.
Appreciate
I'm having
that.
fun already. It's not even 1 minute in. The gloves have been dropped. It's real.
Yeah. I was trying to channel Anthony the best I could.
Oh, okay. Good work.
It's fantastic. So I want to get into your dry bar special. That is very, very interesting to me, and that whole process, and I want to hear all about it. Before we go there, I want to touch upon. Actually, it's kind of a beautiful happenstance here that I have the two of you here. The last time we talked, Dobie, you had mentioned about clean is green, right? Mm-hmm. Don't be too dirty. Don't be. Don't go on stage and go, this fucking fuck that, fuck this. And I kept that in the back of my head. And I didn't do that to begin with, but I had a lot more of that than I should have. And I've kind of skewed my writing with those words in the back of my head. So first of all, thank you for that. Right around that same time, Jaques gave me very similar advice, where he had an opportunity to put somebody on stage. And he said to me, he called me, he's like, hey, I would like to put you on stage. I have the opportunity, but you're not clean enough. For this particular booker. So that all happened around the same time, so I started working on cleaner material. And since then, the way I go about my joke writing has changed, and a lot of more opportunities have popped up for me. So I wanted to thank both of you for that.
Good.
It was kind of a beautiful all-at-once connection. And
if I could just make one thing, thank you for that nice comment, but the reason I tell people that, I get arguments so much from that, and I say, look, it is something that will get you on more stages to get more time to develop your character. If you should decide to go in another direction and be quote unquote, there's no amount of swear words or no combination of them that would offend me in any way personally. This is a business decision. When you start out, sometimes you don't realize the bridges that you're burning without even realizing it. Mm-hmm. I try to say that, with a business head in mind, and comments like, fuck that. Just thank you for getting it the way it was meant.
No, I 100% got it the way that you meant it, and it struck a chord with me. And I still do have jokes that are not 100% clean, but I write them differently so they're not quite as grotesque.
Yeah, and another thing I think is it can go pop the clutch and you can go into it rather than people go right to filth, and you got to develop your character. There's a real art to developing your persona on stage. Mm-hmm. I don't think people know that. I didn't know it until I was probably 20 to 25 years in. Just being funny is not enough. It's a whole package. It's a whole meal. You don't just plop a piece of raw meat down. There's your steak. No, you got to cook the steak and put things around it and have a presentation and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, the two things that I talk to Wayne about and other people about is it's a twofold thing. Lots of the dirty stuff that Wayne had, keeping 95% of the routine, but changing one word or an inflection, is now a PG-13 material. And it's a whole different, you can do that at a fundraising show at a Knights of Columbus for Bedford High School girls softball. And you can do the same routine, just changing a word or two. And then a really good friend of mine, Dante the comic in Los Angeles, I mean, he's another 40-year vet.
I know Dante.
Okay, he's a sweetheart. He's absolute sweetheart. Mm-hmm. He just ran a fantasy camp, a week-long comedy camp, him and Jay Leno and a couple other comics. And he said that Jay Leno in one of these talks, he said something in a discussion about vulgarity and using the F word and stuff like that, that really, and Dante's not a clean comic, but he's not, it's all profanity and gross. But he said, when Jay Leno said there's such an opportunity to be funnier when you're forcing your brain to say the same thing in a more creative way. And he cited an example, and I can't think of the comic. He says, instead of saying asshole, the guy says balloon knot. That's a much funnier word. And you gave yourself another opportunity to be funnier than just saying, it's like, so I'm, the cat walks by and I'm looking at its asshole. It's like, okay, I get it. You're making a joke about a cat walking by you. But balloon knot is saying the same thing. It's funnier, and it's also more creative, and it also doesn't get you censored on a TV show or something like that. So, that was my take on it.
It's a great take, Jaques, and I think also that most comedians, when they start out, don't think, my goal eventually should be to be on TV. Why am I doing this? Do I want to build smoke-filled fornicatoriums in Westchester, or someplace out in New England? I was trying to use a local reference. But
that was very close.
Was that?
That was close.
Yeah.
There might even be a Westchester out here. I don't know.
Worcester or something.
Yeah,
anyway,
Worcester.
My point is, people don't think about why are you doing this? When I started, there were 10 times the work that there is, and a tenth. Now there's a tenth of that, and 10 times more comedians, and it's just a numbers game. So you can be as dirty as you want to. Good luck getting stage time, and even better luck trying to make a living with it. You need regular stage time to get good, to build a name, to build a persona, to get regular bookings, to make a living. I don't know about you. I have that bad habit called eating, and I can't break it. I can't. And it's trickier than ever to get that. And people say, I'm an artist. Good. What's the one word that goes with artist? Starving.
Starving.
That to be me.
Yeah, that was when that really clicked for me. It was not too long after we initially talked. Maybe a month and a half after, when I started working on all that, cutting things back and like really being cognizant of that. Jaques was able to get me up at a show in Tilton, New Hampshire at Smitty's, and it was a 5-minute spot. And I had that 5 minutes where I would normally have some F-bombs or some other swears or whatever. I had no swears whatsoever until the very end. In my last joke, I had a fuck, and it was a very like inflected fuck. It's a joke about my wife watching TV, and the thing is, how many of these shows is my wife going to make me watch? It's every fucking one of them. And that one fuck in the entire set. It was a room full of there was a lot of older people there. It hit so hard, just like you said. Yeah. I didn't take out the oomph from that. It hit so hard because I never said it.
Fuck is still the line. I don't care. And if you use it once, it should be a tool for that exact reason. A bash in the head. Now, if we talked about this last time, I'm sorry, but I know some people might be watching this didn't see our last episode. And Jaques, I think you'll agree with this too. I was a ring announcer for pro wrestling for many years, and what's called a high spot. It's take a guy off the ground, flip him over the top. It's a big move, and it used to be one high spot in the main event. That's the equivalent to saying fuck as a comedian. So the opener, the middle, don't say it. Like you say, if you said it in the last 45-minute sets, every fucking one of them. Big laugh, thank you, I'm Wayne, good night, everybody. There's a purpose there. And the same with the high spots. There's that one, the whole card, 6, 7, 8 wrestling matches up to that last one, and then it's the big slam off the top rope. Bam, good night, everybody, sends everybody home. Now people are doing 10 high spots in the first match. It doesn't mean anything. Same with comedians. The MC goes up at an open mic. How the fuck are you, fucking fucked up fuckers? Now it's gone. That tool is gone in the first 10 seconds of an entire show. I'm not saying don't ever use it. I've never said that. People say, every joke's supposed to be in our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. That's not what I've ever said at all, and it gets misinterpreted. So good. You exactly the right definition of how to use it.
The tough thing with when people start out is going to open mics, and nobody is going into the open mic thinking, I'm going to work on material to become a working comic.
Correct.
Everybody goes into that thinking, I got to win this mic, I got to win over these other comics. I'm headed towards that Netflix special where I'm going to be Anthony Jeselnik. I'm going to be, this edgy, this dark guy versus, and it's tough for somebody like, a lot of people like Wayne and stuff who are going in with kind of cerebral stuff, not like I'm going to gross you out, I'm going to shock comic. And it's funny because we started talking about over a year ago when we started seeing each other at Mike's. It's really tough to go in there knowing, dude, this routine is for a crowd of over 40 people at a Night of Columbus or at a Smitty Cinema. And everybody in this room right now is under 30, and they're coming in with their pedophilia bestiality stuff. And it's just,
hey, I do that.
It's not going to work.
I do that.
And I've said that. I said, hey, that's Dobie Maxwell stuff. You stop right now. That's all him. But that's the tough thing, and you can't get sucked into that. Well, I got to win these. I got to win this room. I got to win the open mic. I got to wow these people because you have to go into those things knowing this isn't the room that you're eventually going to be doing this kind of set. And if you want to be a working comic, because I just watched you at K-Town, a K-Town Burlesque show, and I don't know, but just listening to the audience, that's definitely a crowd that was, the median age was over 35, 40.
Yes.
And it's like your routine, it just killed, in a room like that. It's not going to kill in an open mic, but you don't get paid to go to an open mic.
Go ahead, Dobie.
No, I'm sorry. Wait, I was gonna ask you something. Now, it's been a while since we spoke last on the first time. Tell me where you are in your development. How many years in? How many times? Just because it's like watching a kid grow. In the first 2, 3, 4 years, they grow the most. How much have you grown, and where are you now since the last time we spoke?
So when we last spoke, it actually came out on Christmas. So
that's okay. 4 or 5 months now.
4 months. So I'm now 13 months in. At that point, I had no book shows. I've done 7 or 8 of them now. I have a few more on the, ready to go. I'm about to do my first 15-minute set in a few weeks, and that's been fun to curate. It's been incredible. Just talking to people such as yourself and taking all that information and trying to use it to help form myself as a comedian, so I'm more marketable and more, people, a general audience would appreciate what I have to say more just by changing the way I say things or the way I word things. Or
what Jaques just said is totally true in that, you want to go up there and that's not an open mic and under 30 and all those kind of things. And that's hard for you because every time on stage now, a year in, is very, very crucial, very important. So you're not going to get a chance to go up and do the 15 minutes that you're going to be doing. You're probably just going to have to wing it. Anytime anybody makes that next step, they're not ready. Right. Me, anybody, Jay Leno, Seinfeld, whoever you want to talk to, it's like, okay, you got to go in there calculated and say, all right, every brain surgeon's got his first surgery. I hope I don't kill this dude. Every NFL quarterback, it's my first game. I hope it goes well.
The high school hero who's seeing his first college fastball, who's then seeing his first single A fastball, who's seeing his first double A curveball. I mean, being a 450 hitter in single A ball is great. And it doesn't equate to even being a 300 ball hitter in double A. You have to, have learned, and it's great. One of the really good things about Wayne's podcast and having people like you on, Dobie, is if the information is out there, and there's comics like Dobie Maxwell out there who's willing to say, these are all the ways I fucked up. Try to avoid some of this stuff. And what's nice is we just had somebody on recently who said, and it was great, he goes, I will work with any comic, and I will say, hey, you might want to think about X, Y, and Z. And if they take the advice, great. If they don't take the advice, that's also great because it saves me from having to mention you anymore. But a podcast like this, I just had an exterminator at my house a few weeks ago, and the kid was really great. He saw my setup, and he asked what I do, and I'm like, well, I'm a comic, and he's like, oh, I want to get into it. I talked to him for about a half hour about this, that, the other ways. And I said, listen to my friend Open Mike Payne. I didn't say listen to my podcast. I said, go to episode 1, because these two guys started from their first open mic to today, where they've documented what worked, what didn't, what kind of mics to go to. But as they developed as comics, it's been amazing to watch. But as they've had guests like yourself on, I've said, listen to these people who come on. It's a master's class. Dante the Comic posts on a regular basis on his socials. Comedy tips. He's up to like 260. And it's how to deal with bookers, how to deal with other comedians on your first 3 guys from Boston. They got gigs in New York together. How to act in the car, like this, but also material and stuff. And somebody like you, who's done so much, who's been on the late night talk shows like Craig Ferguson's, to come onto a show like this and say, hey, here's some pitfalls to work out. Here's some things that will help you go from being the 7-minute comic to the 12 to the 15, the 15 to the 20. Each step is a gigantic step. And so having somebody like you come on and say, this is what I did after all these years to get ready for my dry bar, it's a service that I found people like you are willing to put out there. If people are willing to listen, it's going to help. So, again, I know we already thank you for coming on, but I listened to you in December, and when he asked if I could jump on this, I'm like, that guy's fantastic. I would love to have some time with him.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for the kind words. And I think also I never had a big brother in comedy. Nobody wanted to talk to me when I started, and I almost felt like awkward and uneasy. I just, if I could be in the car for 5 minutes, and do I have to buy him lunch just to hear him talk about comedy? And quite honestly, I don't see that with the younger generation now, and I don't know why. I'm not trying to say, you damn kids, get off my lawn. I'm not trying to say that. Comics like yourself are coming up and you want to know and learn. But I think it looks so easy when it's done well that a lot of people say, well, I don't need a class. I'm just going to go up there and hack it out myself. It's like, why would you want to do that? Musicians, actors, even improvisers, they have classes and coaches and mentors and MCs. And sadly, a lot of people now are teaching comedy classes as a money grab, and I really hate to see that. Like Dante's an example. I don't know him well, but we've crossed paths a few times. I'm thinking, he's a legit comic. He's been out there. That's fine. But, those who can't teach. When I started teaching classes in comedy in Chicago, there was not a class within 1,000 miles of me. There was one guy in Atlanta, and Jeff Justice is his name, and he did comedy for a long time. Now, I think at last count, there is 6 or 7 in Chicago, and these people have never had a paid set in their life. And I hate to see that. So thank you, Wayne and Anthony, for doing this podcast for people in your circle that are coming up and need to hear this. If anybody listens, great. Like you said, Jaques, if they don't listen, that's up to them, and I have to stop it. But most people, just take time and just listen. We're not saying it just to hear our own voices. I know I'm not.
We had Mike Atrobus on, who's a local headliner, booker, clown, works for sports, whatever, you name it. He says he has 72 jobs, and I forget every job he's told me he's had. But he said the same thing. He's like, there's a lot of comedy classes out there. How can you, and a lot of them haven't headlined a show, and how can you teach something that you haven't become proficient in?
Correct.
Like this show for us, it's not where we're trying to give advice, but it's through the eyes of somebody who's going through it in the moment. We're not trying to teach you how to do something. We're trying to say, hey, if you don't know what you're doing, or we don't either, so let's go through this together. But we're not charging people and saying, this is how you write a joke, this is how you hold the mic, this is how you do that. So yeah, what you're saying, like there's so many classes where people are not actually in the position of the thing they're teaching is kind of absurd to me.
Well, we're spoiled here, Dobie, because there are people like Tony V's, who's just a legend, who does classes. And there's so many people I've met. Or let's just talk about Mike Atrobus. Wayne and I took one of his hosting classes. And when I left the class, I walked over to Mike, and I felt like I was stealing money from him for what he gave us. It was a hosting class, and it was, I won't go into the minutia, but literally it was, how to hold the mic, all this stuff. But at the same time, he also uses that as a scouting thing. And it's like, he's had, through that process of he finds out, he's watching you and how much you're really willing to take in and how much you're really willing to put in the work. And he'll give you a show, a starting show at one of his lower shows and kind of see where you're going. And over time, if you're willing to take the advice and go do a show and drive a couple hours to do it and take the feedback and take the next step and takes the next step, he will open more and more. And so many of these other comics, like I see, we have this great friend, Lauren, who has been on this show, who took a Tony V class. Now she's a regular opener for him. She hosts and opens. So that is a great thing in our area. We do have people who are willing to come on his podcast, come on my podcast and say, look, here is some of the ways. And yeah, in the Midwest, I guess that must have been a tougher thing because a lot of the people that we have on have said, yeah, I got a break because this person or that person helped me along the way. Bill Burr had Tony V open for him in Fenway last summer, making Tony V the first person to perform in Fenway. And 100%, it's funny because he had told Bill, why don't you go introduce me, say a couple jokes, then bring me on. That way you're technically the first person. But Bill Burr wanted to thank Tony V for all the advice that he had given him. And I've seen interview after interview where Bill Burr has said, I'm here because Steve Sweeney told me this. Tony V told me that. I got stage time here. So in the Midwest coming up, you didn't have the same kind of mentorships?
No, not at all. And Boston is a comedy hotbed, so you guys are lucky to be in the New England area because I never worked there because it was always a closed market. There were all the names you mentioned, Steve Sweeney, Lenny Clark, Anthony Clark, just so many people that outsiders had a hard time. You almost had to move there. That outsiders didn't go in and out like you did in other circuits or areas, things like that. So that's a really good thing. But also you got to get out, and what took me a long time too is going to different regions. There's a different vibe in the East Coast, different vibe in the Midwest, different vibe in the South, different vibe in Texas, different vibe in Canada, different words that people use, different rhythms. And it's like musicians, I think. A good musician should be able to play in a polka band one night, a country band the next, and a rock band the next, and not be out of place. And that takes a lifetime to really learn how to do that. I think if I said this in the last one, I'm sorry, but it's a good example. I started out doing a bit about snowballs and snowball fights in winter. One of my first road swings was in the Southeast, in South Carolina, Greenville, Charlotte, North Carolina, and it doesn't snow there. And I was an opening act, and I was supposed to do 15 minutes. And about 6 minutes in, I was done. So where are you from? So what do you do? So that first couple of weeks was just hell because they weren't buying the snow bed. And I was 22 or 23, whatever I was at the time. And that was a real rude awakening. And I think a lot of times... Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, you've incorporated that into your routine because I've seen you talk about how people call soda different things in different parts of the country.
Pop and soda,
and so you've incorporated being on the road and taking these cultural differences and making a bit out of it.
It came from that, and I think it's just good to have somebody, like Wayne and Anthony. Kudos to you guys for even reaching out and asking somebody, because like Jaques said, most people will be willing to talk to you if you approach the right way. I was afraid to approach, and a lot of people in the Midwest didn't for whatever reason. But as I got up and went out and did it myself, and I say the best carpenter to learn from, he's got the least amount of fingers. He sawed them off, Jack. How'd you do that? So, and I think it's a lifetime. It's a craft, and a craft doesn't happen overnight. Any kind of craft, bricklaying, anything. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm interested to hear about because it has been several months now, about your progress. I'm thrilled. A 15-minute set, that's a big step. Now, do you have a different opener? Do you have a closer? I mean, are you shaping those kind of things? I don't expect you to have it finished, but are you even thinking about putting that in place?
Yep. So I have it all in place. I'm the next few weeks, because it's on May 11th, so the next few weeks I'm going to be going and kind of finagling the way I put things together. Anthony's actually hosting the show, which is good. Kind of another beautiful coincidence. So I have the same. I always start with the same opener. It's just it's a pronouns joke. I mean, everybody's heard at this point. It's basically, hello, my name's Wayne Russell. For those of you that might care, my pronouns are he and him. I usually get silence and stares, and I say my adjectives are fat and bald. And so that's what I always open with, and then I use that to kind of go into another bit, something that I can go with. I have some jokes about being fat, I have some jokes about being bald. So I'm using that as my opener, and then my closer is a joke about dating shows, which I always close with when I'm doing a real show, and I'm just keeping that as my closer because it just always hits so well. And I'm curating the middle to try to make it flow. So that's what I'm working on now, is trying to take all my jokes and making them flow into one another, which might be a little above my pay grade at this point, but I want to be the best I can.
Would you do me a favor, and I could do you a favor in return? And it's okay if you don't have a video of anything. Do you have your act transcribed?
I have it all. I have them all separate. I don't have the entire act as one, but I mean, that's copy paste. I can do that.
Okay, here's the thing what I've been doing. Now, for those of you that don't know, I have a Facebook group called the Maxwell Method of Stand-Up Comedy. We have about almost 6,000 members all over the world. And what I've been doing, just because people have been asking me to, I'll watch a video and make notes. How you look, what you say, what you do. And I'm not going to charge you anything. I charged $99 just because I wanted people to be serious about it. I said, if you think I'm full of shit, I'll give you your money back, no questions asked. And I got about, I think, 30 or 40 people that took me up on it. So I watch the video, watch it again, stop it, make notes. It usually takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours to do that. Here's just some suggestions. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you what you might think about doing. Every one of them, 100% said, oh, this is worth so much more. It's like, I'm not looking to zap people, but I'm looking for basically testimonials. Because down the road, there are corporate people that have money to pay, that need to make corporate speeches. That's where I think I can make money at as a performer, to satisfy my stupid habit called eating. But for comic to comic, it is a favor that I can do. I have the knowledge I have anyway. It's not going to hurt me to sit for an hour and a half, 2 hours, because you got a big show coming up. I think it's like a chiropractic session. It can really help you. If 1 or 2 points hit home and you get big laughs in that on your May 11th, well, then, like I said, this is the growth, the so important the growth period in the next year or two that you're going to just explode more than any time before. So you've been so cool to me and having me on. I'd like to do that for you. If you don't send it to me, I'm not going to be angry. I don't think everything I say is correct, but I think it could help you.
I'll 100% do that, and I don't have the full 15 minutes in video.
Don't have to do it tomorrow, but I'm just saying, when you get it to me, I will get it back to you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
No, and it's funny because when people talk about the cost to do things, people's time is valuable, and somebody to evaluate something like that, Dobie, is invaluable. I mean, I'm very lucky that there's, a very mentoring person that I deal with one-on-one. And it's funny because when I started, talking with, this comic, I kind of did the math in my head. I'm like, this person is willing to take an hour to just sit there one-on-one and go line by line in this. And if I live an hour outside of Boston, if I have to move a lot of pieces around to get to Boston, it's $35 for parking. I'm going to buy a couple sodas when I'm there. It's going to be a 4.5 hour investment of time to get 7 minutes on a stage, and it's going to cost me $35 or $50. Why wouldn't I, if I had an opportunity to send something to a Dobie Maxwell, to evaluate, who's going to take a couple hours to go through it? I mean, that is a service that I really, hope more people, would take advantage of, because you're going to get that. You evaluating something like that is probably the equivalent of going to 20, 30 open mics,
Yeah, it's just, I'm in your corner. I want you to get better. And I'm not, a lot of times, like even a teacher in school, they're antagonistic. You didn't do this. You didn't do. I see the growth. I respect the fact that you guys want to get better. So I'm saying, okay, I've been through it before. In wrestling, I keep going back and forth to that, but I've got a buddy that's been a wrestler as long as I've been a comedian. And he said, you learn how to do the interviews in the car. You learn how to put a match together in the car. Those guys used to drive 200, 300, 400 miles together, and that's how they learned. And comedy is a lot of the same times. I ride with other comedians, and you sit in the back seat, and you listen as an opening act, as the middle and the headliner in the front. And that, that's kind of, it's called paying it forward. People say, why do you do that and not get paid? Because it is paying it forward. I'm not famous, but I got a chance to live my dream. When I was, starting out, it's like, if I could just be a comic, that's all. Well, I was, and I think if you pass it on to somebody else, it's a great profession that I hope doesn't die with the way the world is changing. I mean, blacksmith used to be a really good profession too. There's 1/1000th of the blacksmiths. They're still around, but not nearly as many as there were back 200 years ago. So hopefully comedy's not going to go away.
I don't think it is. I think I got a little nervous with the cancel culture and all that, but I think that's kind of subsided a bit, and you're seeing a lot more comics being more comfortable telling the jokes they want to tell, whether you like it or not. Don't listen or don't. But I think they have a lot more power now. So I think comedy's on the up and up as an overall.
I see a little bit of that too. Like I say, I was just out in Denver in that area. So the Sunday show was a baby boomer and Gen X type show, so the crowd was a little older. But the Tuesday through Saturday was for a different booker, and one was in a pizza place, one was in a hotel, and it was different, and there were people of all ages. And I would agree with exactly what you said, Wayne, because the people there were very open to comedy, and it was a lot of fun, and I didn't sense that whole, oh my God, he said whatever word, or didn't racism. There's always an ism that they're trying to bring up, and it does seem to be subsiding, which is good.
So, Dobie, you travel a lot for the comedy. That's something that I don't, because in Boston, we are so spoiled that, you can drive a half hour, 45 minutes, but the older comics that we talk to, they're still every weekend 2 or 3 hours, to go do a show in Cape Cod or on Martha's Vineyard. It's 4 hours to get there, So part of the traveling is part of the grind. How do you, after all these years, deal with that part of being a working comic?
It is really amazing that how many comics can't have that lifestyle. It's like sports and everything else. That is part of it in my world, because when the clubs came up, I couldn't get into a Boston. So I lived in the Midwest, and most of the gigs were between 3 and 6 hours. So every week I had to depend on that. Okay, I got to go 4 hours for this, 4 hours back. And you don't realize just how important routing is. And sometimes you're 8 hours one way, and then the next week you're 8 hours. So that's 16 hours you got to go through there. And that's all part of it. You might be home 1 or 2 days a month to do your laundry, to get your mail, pay your bills, and then you're back out again. That can be a grind. It's hard to have a relationship in life, in comedy, when you're always gone. It's 10 times harder. Every woman I ever dated said, sometimes sooner, sometimes later, when are you going to quit that comedy thing? It's always a comedy thing, and when are you going to quit? Well, I was doing that when you met me, and now you want me to quit.
Yeah, the same thing with me and heroin. I said, hey. No, sorry, bad example.
It's okay. It's gluten-free, though, I'll say that.
So it's funny because the dry bar thing, Wayne and I think Corey Manning was the headliner. Wayne did the show with me at the Smitty's Cinema. Was that Corey Manning?
No, it was Matt P. Brown. Fantastic.
Okay. Matt P. Brown was great. But Corey, his dry bar thing hasn't come out yet. Jim McHugh, his dry bar thing came out a couple years ago and it's done really well. How was that whole process for you? And was that like a fun experience? And can you walk us through what your day recording that was?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that. And I really wanted to come on and talk about it when Wayne asked me, because it was a lifetime of everything I learned coming into one day. I lived in Utah, so it's a different world if you've never been out there before.
Oh, yeah.
The average age group of an audience in a Utah show is probably 12 to 80. Kids, older people, it's way across the board. So you got to shoot right down the middle. And a lot of comics from anywhere else, I was not used to it when I moved out there. And clean comedy, you can do all the fart jokes you want to, say, oh my God, and you're done. You can't do that. So you have to learn. That's not good or bad. It's just how it is. So I was ready for that. And the other comics that I work with there was 3 that on the taping, and we all did our individual specials. 2 happened to be from New York. We got along great. They were very sweet people. One was talking about subways. Well, there are no subways in Utah. They were doing regionalisms. That wasn't that. And all the stuff we're talking about, working clean, keeping it generic, pop or soda, all those kind of things, that is so important. So I knew what to do. Number 2, and this is so important, and I never would have known this when I started out, how to dress. Okay? Now, Gene Parrott, if you don't know who Gene Parrott is, he was a Bob Hope's head writer back in the day. He wrote for Carol Burnett's show, Welcome Back, Kotter. These are older shows that younger comedians and comedians don't know who they are. But he was a very big writer. He passed away. He was my comedy mentor, my writing mentor. So his daughter he had an expensive tie collection. His daughter sent me one of his neckties. He said, Dad, I always thought if you're going to go someplace, you're going to dress the part. So he had a collection of them. When he would go to big award shows and stuff, he'd have these ties. So I had one, and I took it into a tailor, and I said, look, I've got a big television taping. I need a jacket, sport coat, made off of this tie, this colorful tie. In fact, I'm going to show it to you right here because it's kind of a loud tie, but there it is. Okay,
Beautiful.
so I went in there and he made a jacket for me, a charcoal gray sport coat, which cost $500. I don't think I spent $500 on my entire wardrobe since 2006. So that was an investment that I made, and I'm so glad I did because I walked in and I was styling and profiling like Ric Flair. I looked good. I looked the part. I am the headliner. Exactly. And it's just, but I could just feel they all looked at me like, okay, this guy is dressed the part. So many comics I know, they get on stage and they look like they just changed the oil on a manure spreader. And I'm not saying you have to dress in a tuxedo or even a suit and tie, but you gotta look good. You gotta look the part, especially on TV. So that's the first part. The second part is they asked us to do promos. You had to sit down before and say, hey, this is Dobie Maxwell. I just did a Dry Bar special. I hope you watch, blah, blah, blah. So they basically, you have to say two of them word for word how they want to. The third one, you had to ad lib, and I was around wrestling my whole life, so it's like, and they said, well, you want to take a pad and paper and write something on it? I said, no, let's do it now. So it's about 30 seconds, and bam, nailed it. Now the crew and the staff is like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. I had the respect. I looked the part. I delivered on a promo, which I could tell by talking to those guys that a lot of comics did not do it, that they offered a part. Now, we lost Wayne here. Is he Welcome back, brother.
Am I back?
Welcome back.
I don't know what
are
happened.
back.
I apologize.
We told every secret there is about comedy success when you were gone, so that's
damn it.
only a one-time thing. You're gonna have to.
No,
watch
we
the
figured it
podcast.
all out. We also cured cancer, dude. It was
We
it
did
was
that
pretty,
too. Yes, we did.
You know, without you holding us back, Wayne.
I just found out like tonight. I didn't realize this, but men can get breast cancer. I'm a little nervous because I have a little more breast than a normal man.
Wow, yeah, I did know that. Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's kind of
Oh, more guys get that than prostate cancer.
really.
Dead serious. I'm serious. It's a heart attack. Talking about cancer. So let's
cut
pick it
back
up.
on the whole
Talking
milk.
more. Well, speaking about milk, let's get into the dry bar thing because I think they don't have beer at the dry bar where they shoot that, but I think they have milk on tap because it is Utah.
Yeah, hot and cold running. Yeah, 2%. So anyway, I'm not sure exactly where we left off, but just the things that happened. Here's another thing that was very important. I wear glasses off stage, and I talked to a fashion consultant, which I would have laughed at anybody that said they would have done that. But I said, I got a TV shot. I did Craig Ferguson in 2010, so this is 14 years later. I've aged, as everybody does. What's the best thing? So it's a woman, and she said, well, the tie and the suit coat I like. She said, I would wear the glasses just because it makes you look more distinguished, and I think you should do it. So I did it. I happened to be nearsighted. Well, there was a clock on the back of the wall, like a basketball game clock, and they counted down from 25 minutes. So they said, if you could get 2 minutes either way, we would appreciate it. That's the golden sweet spot right there. Well, I've been in radio most of my adult life, along with comedy, and I could see finally, because I used to squint, and all the times I've called sirs, ma'ams, and ma'ams, sirs, because I'm nearsighted. I can barely see the front row. So it came down to 3, 2, 1, thank you, good night. I hit it to the second. Now I just did the promos right. I looked good. I hit the thing on the side from the first show. On a 1 to 10 scale, and I'd been to Utah before, it had been a few years, I would give it a 6.5, maybe a 7. You know, I changed a few things. I kept the mic in the stand. That's a whole other thing we'll talk about on another podcast episode. But I felt a little bit stiff, but the audience liked it. Now I'm thinking, okay, I've got a second opportunity. Now I can be loose a little bit and take some chances. Now, I have a bit which is not dirty at all, but I grew up in Milwaukee, which is the home of Harley-Davidson motorcycles. And I talk about my dad was a biker. He really was. And a joke I came up with years ago is my mom told me she used to breastfeed me on the back of a Harley going 75 miles an hour down the highway. And I'll talk about the whole thing. I've got black leather Pamper diapers on. She's got the leather biker chick jacket. Unzips the jacket, flips out a boob, starts hopping all around. By the time I get it, it's butter. Bang. Okay, that's a big joke right there. It's a structured joke I've done for years. Now, I knew, I didn't do that the first set. I knew that might be a little bit racy for Utah audiences, believe it or not. Now, that's experience. It took a lifetime to get to that. So I thought, that's a big joke for me. It opens it up usually, so I'm going to take a gamble and adjust it for Utah audiences, okay? So I said, I'm from Milwaukee. My dad was a biker. My mother told me she nursed me on the back of a Harley rather than breastfed. Breastfed is not dirty, especially in a club or anywhere else, but Utah's a different animal. She nursed me on the back of a Harley going 75 miles an hour. Didn't say anything else, just made the gesture that I did usually before. By the time I get it, it's butter. Bang! Explosive laugh. Now I can pop the clutch and take it through the... So I just hit it like a club set. I like to keep the mic in the stand for TV, but in a club set, I'm all over the place. So I took the mic out of the stand and did basically a club set, closed it, 3, 2, 1, thank you, good night. Now, I knew I was getting to the end. I had about 3 minutes to go, so I closed with a bit that I wasn't going to close with that I knew would get laughs. I did it on the Craig Ferguson show. I'm thinking the dry bar people have not seen that show. Now, this is like a quarterback at the line of scrimmage going through all these a million things, checkdowns in your head. So I close it. I got a standing ovation. Okay, now I'm not bragging. I didn't think it was a standing ovation worthy set, but I've done thousands of sets. That's the only one they've seen, and they thought it was standing ovation worthy, so they stood up. Who am I to say not to do that? Okay, so I've got it on video, and so now it's out of my hands. They're going to edit it when they want to. They're going to release it when they want to, but I did my share. Now, one other thing that happened to this, and it's very important. I hope people listening will take this in. In between sets, there was a makeup girl that would come and touch up the makeup. Well, most comics don't know about it. They don't care about it. The first one, she was fine. She was about 19 years old. And the second one, I was getting ready to go on, and she had the wrong makeup tray. And she had a look of terror on her face. Oh, my God, I got the wrong thing. I said, look, no amount of makeup is going to make me look good, okay? It's all good. Let's just go out there. And she took a breath, and she laughed, and we did it. Turns out, without knowing this, her mother was one of the big higher-ups in the production crew, and she was just kind of hanging out, okay? It got back to her. Dobie Maxwell was nice to the daughter. You don't think that went a long way? I mean, and she just had a look of fear. I'm sure comics have yelled at her in the past or anything like that. It's all right, being laid back. At the end of the night, okay, shook hands, kissed babies, took pictures. The head lady in charge came over to me, sought me out, and said, "What took them so long to book you? You were the best one we've ever had here." Now, none of this is bragging. And I said, well, I hope I can come back. And she said, count on it. So what I'm saying is it took a lifetime to know being funny is this much. It's nice if you are. Do they like you? Do you look the part? Can you walk in there and have them comfortable? Do you use people's names? Hi, Jaques. Hi, Wayne. You know, it's really nice to be here. Now, they have a professional photographer there. So I'm in a suit and tie. I'm looking as good as this ugly white boy can look. I'm smiling. And they said, hey, do you have any, like, gestures that you do when you're acting? Take a specially designed professional photo for the poster of all the comics. I said, well, I wrote a book, which I did. I said, would you mind if I maybe held up a copy? Oh, that's great. No one's ever done that before. So now I have a professional quality shot I can use as a promo shot for my book. That would have cost at least $400 or $500. Because I was nice, because I showed up on time, all those little things that have nothing. I would say funny is maybe 10 to 15% of the importance of it. There's a lot of funny people. How are you as, again, that whole package? So when you go in there, Wayne and Jaques, as you're coming up the ranks, you know, learning how to act with confidence. So, there's a guy named Jimmy Wiggins, and he passed away a while back, and I want to pass this along to younger comics. He said there are 3 introductions to yourself. The first one is when you go to the town, wherever the town is. You stop and ask directions, get gas, have some lunch, whatever it is. Hey, I'm the comic, I'm in town. The second one is when you walk into the building. To the bartenders, to the person in charge, to the door person. Hey, I'm the comic. Blah, blah. The third introduction is when you get introduced on stage. So you are in control. You are the nicest person in the world, or the perception should be that. And you don't have to be fake. But these are all things that I wish I would have known way earlier than I did. So it took dry bar decades, how many years, 30 whatever years to get to that point. I hit a grand slam home run. Mm-hmm. Oh, man, you made it look so easy. Well, if you would have known all the fingers I sawed off through the years to get to that one night. Now, again, will it go over with the public? Nobody could say. I have no idea. But I wanted to tell those details, those little things, so somebody coming up, you were in the same position going to do 15 minutes at a club for the first time that I was doing a TV special. Yeah. Does that make sense to you?
It does, and that actually kind of rings true to me. So I'm an outside salesman for my day job, and okay. 2 of the people that I respect most in my life are my direct boss and the owner of my company. They're some of the most real people that you'll ever meet. And a story that really hit home with me with them was the owner of my company when he was just a just a regular sales guy like me. He brought a factory rep into a shop, and when he was walking through, he walked up to a guy mopping the floor. He's like, "Hey, Bill, how you doing? Nice to see you." And then went on and talked to the guy that he was there to see. And the factory rep was like, "Why the hell are you talking to that guy? He's just mopping the floor." He goes, "That is the owner of the company." And the whole moral of that story is, if you don't, like, one, just be a decent human being and just be nice to everybody. But you also never know who you're speaking to.
Grandpa said, it's nice to be important, but it's important to be nice.
Yeah, so exactly.
I love your story, man. True.
Yeah, that's...
I
go ahead,
was going to say how people treat the wait staff at a restaurant. Like, my sons are getting to the dating age, and it's like, if something isn't right, if you order something that's wrong, politely, send it back, say something. But also, if everything is right, or they handle something great, take as much time to find that person's manager and say, "Oh my God, Wade was a fantastic waiter. We really enjoyed our time." Like, take 2 seconds out of the day, and it's like the people that I've known in my life, and I've known so many crazy successful people, how they treat the janitor is how they treat the CEO.
Amen.
And everybody in between. And it's like all the stupid things our grandfather said, all the cliches from 100 years ago, they're the same people you see on your way up the ladder are the same people you see on your way down.
Yep.
And again, when somebody like Dobie is saying, "Hey, I learned the hard way maybe, or I learned over the years," it's like, when you get to the club, make friends with everybody, from the person who greeted you at the door to the person who's bringing you up to stage and in between, because they'll remember the people who take the 2 seconds out to make those personal contacts. I'm so happy to have a conversation with Dobie.
Thank you. One last thing. This is a secret that you can use, and even if everybody that watches this podcast uses it, it's still going to be effective. And with emails the way they are now, the power of snail mail a thank you card. I haunt thrift stores and rummage sales. I usually find a box of 20 of them for 50 cents or $1. And you just, "Hey, I loved working at the Comedy Crematorium. I really had a blast. Love it." 99 times out of 100, you go back and it'll be on the wall in the office because nobody does that. Thank you.
I keep envelopes on my desk every day, pre-stamped. I write
with
almost
Batman
a letter.
Stamps. I love it.
With Batman stamps. But I do. No, Dobie, that tiny little thing, it's like I write my friends on a regular basis, who I see all the time, because 99% of your mail, it's a circular from a store you don't go to. It's addressed to the person who owned your house 10 years before you bought it, or it's a bill. Yeah. And isn't it really nice to get a letter just saying, "Hey man, I'm thinking of you," or "Thank you."
It's one-on-one time, especially to bookers that are booking 1,000 comedians. The time it takes to read that card, it could be 30 seconds, 2 minutes, whatever it is. And a handwritten note, very, very important. And I know with the young comics today, you kids, business cards don't seem to be a thing. I am going old school and say invest in some business cards. Doesn't have to be kooky and wacky. Wayne Russell, stand-up comic, email, phone number. If you want to make it a little funny or colorful or anything like that, and put the thank you card, like Jaques says, and your business card, send it. Look at that as the cost of doing business, like a tip. How much is a stamp? It's probably almost $1 now. It's probably, 70 cents, whatever it is. It is the best advertising bang for the buck you will ever get in your life.
That's fantastic.
With our, I want to backtrack a little bit if you have just a couple more minutes, Dobie.
Sure,
with our technical difficulties, I didn't get to chime in with this, but I do have a couple questions with you on the dry bar.
Please,
the first is, how does that come about? Did they reach out to you? Do you have to send them tape, like they're a booker, or like how does that happen?
It's a very good thing. Like most other things, it gets polluted in time. Now I told you I happen to live out there. The booker is a guy named Keith Stubbs, who opened a comedy club out there 20 years ago. That's when I had a radio job. I approached him, and his club was 2 blocks from the apartment that I had out there. I said, "I'm out here from Chicago. I got a radio job. I will open, middle, headline, whatever you want as you open your club. You don't have to pay me. I know you're getting started. There will be a time when I don't have a job that I'll need to take your money, and I don't know when that's going to be." And that's exactly what happened. I got fired, so we had a synergy working together. So I had an unfair advantage. I knew who he was, and he offered it to me probably 2 or 3 times over it's been going for several years. I couldn't do the dates, whatever. As it turned out, I got in an exercise plan. I dropped about 20, 25 pounds. So the time, but I did get it. I was ready for it, and I was, I looked as good as I can look, and I'm glad that I waited. So how do I get it? I knew him. Since that time, I think, people, their agents have gotten involved, like happens in cruise ships, and the money that, I would tell you the money, but I'm not authorized by them, so I hate to say it on the podcast how much I got. You're not supposed to tell. So I knew it went down over time. If you really want to know, you can off stage. I'll tell you. So, but you have to get yourself out there. You have to put yourself up. So it's basically a stipend to do that. So how did I get picked? I knew Keith Stubbs, and I didn't talk to him for years. Other people, I think agents are stepping in, and they're making. I don't know if they're going to Keith Stubbs or the actual producers. Keith is not the owner. He's just the booking agent. But a lot of people can say, well, I had a friend that knows. So I think who to approach, get to know as many agents as you can. But it's sadly, how can I say this without being an asshole? How an agent sees you the first time they see you is how they will always see you.
Yeah,
You're a year in. You might be doing really great for being a year in, but you're still competing with people like me who've been doing it 35 years. So that's not fair for you to compete with me. So if you send a video now, hey, I'd like to do this, and it's like, well, and you could do 5, Comedy Central specials, and they'll still look, oh, that's Wayne, it's the open micer, him and Anthony got that. Mm-hmm. So it's how a person first sees you is how they'll always see you. So now the Dry Bar people saw me as a big star, looked good, knocked it out of the park. They think I'm hot shit. I'm not even room temperature shit. They just caught me at you know what I'm saying? They caught me at the right progression. So I'm glad you asked that question. How do you get it? I think you got to sniff around and you find it. And just with clubs and any venue that you're going to want to work as you come up the ranks, bookers will change, agents will change. There'll be people poaching gigs, and if you work here, you can't work there. We could do 3 episodes just on that kind of stuff alone. So how did I happen to know the guy, but it was 20 years in the making to get that. To answer your question.
Yeah. It's funny because I say that I have fights on SNL, and so many people are like, oh my God, he's so lucky. He has not worked a day in his life in comedy since he was about 14. And he's like, took him 21 years to get there. So I'm like, yes, he's a 21-year overnight success.
Absolutely, yes. But I think also too, as it comes up, don't let that bug you. It is the journey, and you hear all those things. It's not the destination; it's the journey. It truly is. You're working on this 15-minute set that you got, and then it'll be what's your next step. Everybody's got a next step. Even if you're not a comic, your first open mic. That's your next step. Mm-hmm. So everybody has a next step on every level. If you have 10 specials, well, what's my next step? Maybe I want to do a movie. Maybe I want to do something. So we all have that next step. And I think just focus on that one next step. You can have a career rather than, how come they're all getting stuff and I'm not? So many people look at everybody else. Look at yourself.
It's very easy to do that. And
yes.
I found it very easy to back off and go, I just want to tell jokes in front of real people. I don't want to tell jokes in front of the comics that are sitting by the bar talking. I don't care if it's 10 people, 10 old people with different colored hair. I don't give a fuck. I just want them to not be comics. So
sure.
I don't care how long. It'd be 30 seconds. I'm fine with it.
And that's another thing, too. And a lot of times people argue with me. And it's like, look, I never want to argue. I'll discuss with anything. And I have opinions. Doesn't mean I won't change my mind if you prove me wrong. But I think the whole open mic, when I did open mics, that was basically the only the only stages that there were to work in Milwaukee. This is before the comedy club boom. But after a while, open mics don't have a purpose anymore. If it's just other comics watching you, like you said, they're never going to pay to see you.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, I don't know if you're a sports guy. I use sports analogies because I like sports. But practice is you can only get to a certain level on practice. You need game experience. And so many people, the backup quarterback or whatever position that they are, like you said, 10 people that aren't comics to watch you is better than 15 open mics like you guys were talking about. I win the open mic. I have to do that. Nobody wins anything. To me, stay home and write, watch your podcast, do some research. Going to an open mic in front of other comics is a waste of gas. Like Jaques said, $35 to park and a couple of sodas, and God forbid you want to have a hot dog or a steak sandwich or something, and you're talking about $100 you're paying out here. That's expensive for zero payoff.
I'm by no means above open mics. I would go to one every night if I could, but with my wife's back in school, so my time to go to open mics is a lot different. Is a lot less rather, and my mentality on where I'm going to spend my time is a lot different now. And with all these opportunities popping up, I'm like, do I just I have a mic stand and a mic at my house and I practice. Do I do that, or do I go out and sit for 3 hours and listen?
That's going to give you just as much. I hate to say it, and I'm not trying to trash open mics. I'm just saying that will give you as much growth as going to an open mic. If there are civilians at the open mic, even if it's 5 or 10, there's 20 comics and there's 10 people there to see comedy. That's okay. But 99% of the ones that I've gone to, and I try to go to support. But okay, yes, I'm older. I could probably be all of their dad's age. And it's just like high school. They're looking at me, who's this old fart? It's like, dude, I could teach you a lot if you just close your mouth and open your ears for 10 minutes. And if you ask me a question, I'll sit for an hour after you, buy you a drink, and talk comedy. But you look at me like, who the hell are you? And we're full. Okay, I didn't ask to go up, but all right.
Yeah. That's something that is interesting because, like, I kind of ran into that with Jaques a little bit where, like, we started talking back at the open mics and you kind of you came across the, we'll say the cold shoulder in some instances, right? But here you are, you're rising above and beyond, and, we're all taking our different paths, but me, you, and Anthony, and a few other people are kind of rising above some of what's going on elsewhere, one way or another, not saying bad or good or whatever, but a lot of those people that gave you the cold shoulder are now coming to you going like, well, help. And you're like, well, you didn't help me. So,
it's funny, Dobie, you are a working comic. This is your life. This is your livelihood. You've been doing it. And it's so funny how Wayne and I have had these conversations where the number of people have said to either one of us, it's like, yeah, podcasts aren't my thing, or oh, I can't make time to do a podcast. And yet some of the people that we've had on, of your stature, who have forgotten more about comedy than probably Wayne and I will ever know. 'Cause we started so late, we're not going to get in our 10,000 hours. But it's amazing when people like you are willing to come on and put these things out there, whether it's talking about how to act in the car, how to deal with a makeup who brought the wrong makeup into a room, or how to structure a joke. And that's one of the great things. It's like, I listen to so many podcasts when I can, whether it's, an ex-Saturday Night Live writer or something like that, or you coming on here talking about this stuff. The information's out there, but we have found that there's so many people who a year ago that we were with who are still kind of spinning the wheels in those same, trying to win the same open mics that they were trying to win a year ago versus, hey, how do I get to go from a 7-minute to a 12-minute? How do I find the bookers? How do I deal with them? How do I get my material ready? So it's this stuff that you're throwing out here. Like, send a postcard saying thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that I don't know anybody under 40 who would have thrown out as advice, but it is a beautiful sentiment and a fantastic idea for people to follow up on it.
And that's totally okay. And Wayne, like you were saying, you're in a sales job. Comedy is a sales job. You're selling yourself to bookers and you're selling yourself to audiences.
Yep.
And a lot of times bookers, just because somebody has the authority to tell you can go on stage, does not mean they have the knowledge, the experience, and they don't know their asshole from apple butter. And I mean that in a friendly and a customer service kind of a way, but a lot of fucking idiots book comedy rooms. And they don't do it for the purpose of being love of comedy. It's a power trip, their ego trip, whatever kind of trip it is. It's not a comedy trip. So a lot of times, people with talent, I can feel the passion in both of you as I talk to you, and it's very refreshing. That's why I want to spend time, because I had the same passion when I was coming up. But the people that usually run shows, their passion is selling booze. We're talking to two different languages, two different species. And I think, you got to know that. So to surround yourself, whoever's watching this podcast, please surround yourself with not only good comedy people, because that's important too, but good business people. You need it's right-handed, left-handed. Go ahead, Jack.
Well, I mean, I love the fact that Wayne and Anthony have been doing this together.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful thing that old friends started this horrible thing together.
Yeah.
And the support system. I have had the same writing partner who isn't a performer, but is the funniest person I know since '93. And it's just been so wonderful to have these people that, and of course, and then like-minded people, gravitate together. I want to change up just a bit. Dobie, what are the venues? What type of venues do you like to perform at? What are the shows? And granted, the biggest crowds with the biggest paychecks are great, but what are the kind of venues that you like to get booked on?
Well, I'm glad you asked that because I just did one this past Sunday. The reason I drove out to Denver from the Chicago area, it was about 1,100 miles one way. I did it in a 2001 Ford Focus. So that's how much I'm stupid or I really love to perform. And I think it's a little bit of both. I don't know which exactly it is. A mixture. So I got there and there were... What's that?
I think I saw you post about this on...
Yeah. So I got out there and it was another booker said, hey, I've got 5 nights in Colorado. And we're all different kind of. One is a pizza place. One was a hotel. The other one was a kind of a social kind of club theater. And, we don't pay hotels. So I basically lost money on those. But I've done enough comedy through my life that I really nailed them because I could read the audiences. The one I liked was the final show. The reason I went out there, it was a baby boomer / Generation X themed show. So there was a little older audience. It was in a 300-seat theater, cultural center, performance art kind of a thing. 300-seat theater, no tables. It was, what do you call it, theater seating, raised, elevated seating. Huge stage. There was a music act beforehand. The guys in my comedy group, James R. Zingelman. If you haven't joined my comedy group, the Maxwell Method of Stand-Up Comedy, please join. It doesn't cost anything. A lot of good information comes in and out of there. So that's my favorite venue, a theater. And I'm sick and tired of performing for drunks. A lot of times when you start off, you got to be in bars and you go up late, and I got to be really great with hecklers, not because I wanted to be, because I had to defend myself. Then I got out, he's great with hecklers, come out and take your shot. No, that's not what I ever wanted to do. So I think to answer your question, the theater thing, but a new comic is not going to get that opportunity because the theater is not going to have an open mic. You better have your shit by the time you get in that situation. So that's my favorite venue, but it's not always a choice. What are your guys' favorite venues at this point in your journey? Your adventure.
Jacques, I'll let you go first. I have one on tip of my tongue.
I've been really lucky because I've been able to help out a couple really established bigger bookers who are also comics with other projects. So it's been really nice. I get to do a lot of kind of opening shows or hosting shows at different kinds of venues. I really do like the four-wall events where somebody is renting, here they have Knights of Columbus, they have Elks and stuff like that. And usually those rooms are 100, 150 people. Yeah. It's a big night out for them. It's a fundraiser for X, Y, or Z, or it's a special, an event, and it's people who tend to be over 40. Yep. They're really just looking to spend $25, $30 and have and see friends that going to these events. Those shows to me are a lot of fun. Wayne has done one, and he'll be doing a bunch more with me. They're called Smitties. We also have Chunkies. They're those nice movie theaters that have table service.
Oh, nice. Yeah, okay, sure.
The big seats. Those rooms are 100, 120 people. And again, you have to be willing to drive 2.5 hours each way to Maine to do it. And they also feed you. So you make a couple bucks. The food is good. But those are crowds that also tend, so Wayne, why don't you talk about the experience you had after the show at the Smitties when people come up and talk to you?
Yeah. So I mentioned it earlier when Jacques offered me the 5-minute spot at Smitties. So when I initially walked in, I was like, I'm familiar with Chunkies, and Chunkies is like a flat floor and, tables, and they have the car chairs and whatever. I'd never been to a Smitties, and I figured it was the same thing. But when I walked in, it actually had the theater, the angle going up, right? So you had your flat floor, then you had the stages of seating going up. So I'm like, this is more like a theater. When I walked in, I'm like, wow, there's 60 people in here. In about 15 minutes, it turned to 90, 100 people, something like that. It was incredible. It was a nice dark room, spotlights. It felt like it's close to a comedy club that I've been in.
Sure.
And then after the show, after everybody went up, we're all leaving. We had people coming up going oh man, how long have you been doing comedy? This is so great. This is amazing. I had one guy come up and say, I want to do comedy for so long. how'd you get started, and just being able to have those conversations and having people appreciate what you did, even in like a 5-minute span, was incredible. Yeah, I mean that is my ideal. I don't care where the venue is. I think it's just where people are really enjoying what you're doing, to the point where they come up to you, or not even, they don't have to come up to you, just where they're enjoying whatever you're doing. I don't care what the venue is, as long as I'm getting laughs and as long as people are enjoying their night out. That is what I care about.
Yeah, I think most younger comics, and I know I didn't, exactly what you're talking about. There are literally millions of people from coast to coast that want what you just described, and most of them are not in an open mic bar situation. You know, especially for younger comics, if you're in your early 20s, when most comedians start, and you're the age, you are whatever age you are when you start. I happen to start in my early 20s, but just because you don't doesn't mean you can't still have fun and enjoy it. But, you know, you got to put your stuff out there where people are going to enjoy it. And so many times, good comics that love it and are actually naturally funny quit before they get started because they have to fight the open mic situation. The idiot that runs it, that promises you, oh, you're number 6, and then 14 of his friends walk in. Next thing you know, it's 1:30 in the morning and you're not up. You know, and it's a 4-hour shit fest. And I always tell people, it's like, would you go watch a t-ball game of kids that weren't yours or people you know? No, my God, it'd be torture. That's what open mics are.
Well, I would, but Chris Hansen would be waiting for me. That's a different,
well, yes.
Like, that's a little uncomfortable that you brought that up, Dobie, but let's move on.
All right, that's hilarious. Too funny. But and again, I think people that run the open mics don't know how to run it. No event should be longer than 90 minutes. And these mics are like 4 or 5 hours. It starts at 8, it ends at 2 in the morning. Who wants to sit through that? So
I think I did 50 mics before I did a show I let my wife come to. Mm-hmm. I just wasn't going to subject her to, like the joke I just made, like 2 hours of that to see 5 minutes. It's like, I couldn't do. I was at a place that it's a nice theater. I know it's a real headliner. I know it's going to be well run. And like you said, from the, hey, how's everybody doing, to thank you, good night, is 90 minutes. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You know, anything past that is just too much. So,
well, Wayne, like you just said, I'm sorry to interrupt you here, but what you just said about the venue that you described, if a younger, newer comic can produce a show, if you're in an area like Boston or New England, you're not going to run out of people that you can bring in. So if you call up and say, hey, I have this show, would you headline it on a Thursday night for a fair wage? It doesn't have to be huge money. You can get on the show either as a host or, better yet, hire a good host and go in on the sweet spot. Mm-hmm. Do however much time you got, 8, 10, 12 minutes, whatever that is. That's going to do you more good and give you power with headliners who will talk to you, rather than waiting what Jaques just described, the 4-hour, pig fuck. So that's a little tip for anybody watching that. Put on your own shows. It might not be pleasant, but it's going to help you grow a lot more than trying to get the eye of some half-wit running an open mic.
We haven't really talked about this much, but we are actually in the position of potentially doing that. Nothing too crazy, but Anthony has gained some equipment. We're looking at banners and stuff like that, and just if nothing else, an open mic, and making it just a little more different than your standard open mic. I won't go more into that yet, but. Yeah, somebody gave us that advice. Like, why are you not doing that? We have the podcast, we have the notoriety behind us. We should be putting on at least a show, or even like Mike Atrova said, why on our podcast? He's like, why would you not put on a show with 10 other comics, each do 10 minutes or whatever, 5, 10 minutes, whatever, and film it and use that as your tape to send out? Do something like that.
How about this for another? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, there's got to be enough comics in the area, and even someone that's just a feature act, hire them to close with 20 minutes so they get experience closing a show, and they can show, okay, the open mics the guys are funny, but this guy or woman is a little bit higher, so that makes it more of a show for the audience to develop fans. I think it would only cost, $50 a set, or whatever it is. Come in and get a set like that, and make it more like a show rather than an open mic, just a flat.
No, that's absolutely brilliant.
I live in a small town, and there's a restaurant that's a 3-minute walk up, right there in my house. And I hit them up. I was like, hey, have you guys considered doing comedy? And they're like, yeah, we have. And I was like, well, let me know, because like I'm trying to, I'm a comic. I'm trying to get in. I can help you out. And they completely just, whatever, just nothing, ghosted me. But I think something like that would be cool. We were in a small town. There's nothing going on here on any night of the week. I think that would be fantastic for the town, but.
Sure. That would be amazing. But Dobie, can I ask, before we just wrap it up, how much new material do you think you write for yourself a year? At this point, are you still passionate about the writing process?
That's a great question, Jaques, and I'm glad you brought it up, because somewhere the rumor got out that Louis C.K. writes a new hour every year, and that's what I have to do. Bullshit. And I hate that got out. No offense to Louis C.K. Maybe he does that. Maybe he doesn't. It takes years to polish a bit. That 5-minute bit I talked about the breastfeeding thing. I've been doing that on and off for probably 15 to 20 years. Okay? And just getting the right, just fine-tuning it and honing it, the pauses, the words to use, the when to let up. That takes hundreds of times on stage refining it. So don't be in such a hurry to write new material so as much as to refine and polish the bits you have. Sometimes it's 2 beats in a syllable or 3 beats or 1 needs to be less, and all that experimenting, it takes a lot of stage time to do that. So I would say, realistically, coming up the ranks at a year in, if you can get 5 to 8 minutes a year for the next 10 years, that's not unrealistic, and it's going to take a lot of work to do even that. I can do more than I got hours of material. Yeah, how come I keep seeing the same bullshit 5 minutes every time I say it?
So with that, I guess when you were putting together your set for your dry bar special, how did you decide what you were going to use? Did you look at it and go, okay, this is because you haven't recorded a special yet, right?
No, that was the
in
first
any
one.
form. So did you go, I'm going to use this. I'm going to use all my best 25 minutes, or did you go?
Let me go back on that. I did, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I have a director friend of mine, and he got together and said, I have a little room I could probably fill. Let's do a video, and I needed a clean to try to get corporate work video. So I did an hour and 5 minutes of all the material I had. This is probably 10 to 12 years ago. I wore a sport coat, and it turned out really well. He's a director. It was a 3-camera shoot. So I'm thinking, okay, I just did my act, quote unquote. So to answer your question, what did I do this time? Going back to pro wrestling. Pro wrestling might be for idiots, but it's not by idiots. There are very smart people that put it out there. And there's a term, it's called getting yourself over. So what a wrestler needs to do is when they do their first interviews before they wrestle to the TV audience, this is how it used to work in the old days, you have to are you a good guy? Are you a bad guy? Where are you from? What's your characteristics? And you have to get the crowd to know who you are before you get in the ring so they can know to cheer or to boo you. So what I did, I thought, I'm getting myself over. For example, Dobie Maxwell is a stage name, okay? I don't deny I changed my name, and I talked about it. And I said, Lady Gaga was not Baby Gaga. It's a stage name. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Muhammad Ali, blah, blah, blah. So my name is, I had to go in front of a judge, which is a true story, and he said, you're changing your name to Dobie Maxwell. No, Your Honor, it's Dobie J. Maxwell. What's the J for? Genius. Next case. That's not necessarily a funny joke. Okay, thank you for laughing. It's a mercy. Thank you. My point is, that joke is about me personally and who I am. It happens to be a true story, but it didn't have to be. So any comic, I say, try to do at least a few of those jokes up front so they can know who I'm married, I'm single, I work, I don't, I'm children, and not whatever it is that you're trying to throw out there.
Yep.
Make it about yourself. The big mistake comics used to make is, well, now it'll probably be with their phone, but they take a pad and paper and they walk through Walmart. Okay, what's funny about groceries? What's funny about sporting goods? And they go outward. They look what outward funny is. I'm saying go inward. What do I think about groceries? What do I think about? And it's not what. Don't let other people talk. Let Aunt Fanny talk at Christmas. As a comic, you got to be greedy. What does Wayne think? What does Jaques think? What does Anthony think? And it takes a lot to make that turn. And when a comic can make that turn and look inward, the faster you can get to that point, the faster you're going to grow. It took me way too long.
I was just listening to Conan O'Brien's podcast. And he had Jimmy Carr on, and Jimmy Carr just released his special on Netflix, Natural Born Killer.
Love him.
Yeah.
And he said something that, and this was something that I've kind of struggled with. he said, you have to just do what you think is funny. And if people don't find it funny, that's not for them. When they do, it's for them. And I've kind of been like taking that on as well in tandem with what people such as yourself have been saying. I'm trying to kind of mold my material so it's more general population okay. But I also want to stay true to myself. And yeah, you're right. You're going to have to look inward. Like, what do I think is funny? And that's what I'm going to put out there. If people don't think it's funny, then I guess that's...
And that's a really good point. And again, you're in that's such of an important growth stage a year, 13 months in. Now, somebody told me this a long time ago, and I give them credit. I don't know who said it, but I'll say it anyway. It is the best place to get hit is in the middle of the road. Okay, that's the best place where cars are going to be out there. So to go the mass appeal, which most newbies, and myself included, okay, it's a guess. You're acting, you're saying what you think a comedian should say, and you're talking about what you think it should be. It takes a while to get to that inward switch, and you might not be there yet. You know what I'm saying? But nobody expects... You're not in first grade. You might have been in second or third grade the last time I talked to you. Maybe you're in fourth or fifth now. It's been a few months later. But you're still in grade school, and that's not an insult. We all are.
Yeah.
So I think, okay, yes, decide what is funny. Because in your sets now, they're not going to be longer than probably... You're doing a 15-minute set, but they're not all going to be 15 minutes.
No.
So take some risks. You know what I'm saying? And it says, I think this is funny. Okay, it didn't work. Don't give up on it. And the silence is deafening.
That's where I'm at now.
But you got to love it. You got to love the silence. You have to learn to embrace the silence.
I'm glad you said that. So I actually had an interaction with a guy who has not gone on stage yet today. Okay. He had posted on one of the Facebook groups for open mics and stuff. And I sent him a private message saying, like, hey, this is who I am. I have this podcast, these mics are pretty cool, whatever. And he was just very vocal towards me. And so I was blasting stuff off, and I was like, you need to go on stage. Don't worry about if the comics laugh at you. You're not there to get laughs from the comics. Go up there, learn how to hold the mic, learn how to tell a joke, bask in the silence, because the silence is the most telling thing when you're on stage, and I felt like such a mentor, but I'm not, but I was just telling him what I've learned throughout the last 13 months, and we had like an hour-long conversation. I'm probably going to meet up with him tomorrow at a mic, but that's such good advice.
Well, and I think too, what a comic is going to laugh at is not what a civilian is going to laugh at.
That's true.
If you're killing at the open mics, I've seen so many comics get up in front of a regular crowd and just tank it, and they don't know how to deal with it. They don't embrace the silence. They don't know how to deal with it. This shit's hard, and most comics don't admit that. They're just that cocky. I can do this. No, Daddy didn't love us. That's why we're comics. We come from broken homes. We're fucked up. We're not cute. Whatever it is, that's okay. But it's an illusion. The illusion is I'm just making up this witty stuff off the top of my head, and it's none of that. It's structure and work, and having discussions like this. I agree with what Jaques said. This is worth 5 open mics. Mm-hmm. This discussion we had today. Hopefully, other people will 100%. See it, and you're not alone. It is hard. It's not fun sometimes.
Yeah,
especially after having a bad set and you don't have anything booked for a week or two.
Oh,
is that...
that's like I heard Ray Romano on, I think, the Gilbert podcast. This is going back like 5 or 6 years, and he was talking about his wife auctioned him off at a school fundraiser, like his kid's fundraiser, and it's like you could bid on him to come to your house and do a backyard set. And he said he ate it so bad, and it was such a horrible set, he couldn't go home, that he drove into the city knowing that there's a couple places at 1 a.m. he could get up because there was no way he was going to be able to go to sleep until he got up on stage and had a good set. But yeah, where Wayne and I are, it's like I get 3 or 4 or 5 book shows a month, and it's great. But my kids had like school vacation last week, so I was home and had my last set suck, and I didn't get on stage for 12, 15 days. Yeah, literally. I mean, it just would have been nightmarish. And yeah, it's like one of those when you lose the last game of the season, and you all off season to think about it.
Amen, brother. Amen. I hear you.
So I guess we'll start wrapping things up. Dobie, I really appreciate it. You mentioned
Anytime.
the wrestling thing, and I know me and you have talked about doing like regular episodes with different topics and stuff with your expertise and your knowledge over the years. A great comic in our area is Lloyd Legacy Sharp, and he is a huge wrestling fan. I think it would be so cool with you coming on and talking to him about wrestling. I don't know if you follow wrestling at all now. I'm kind of slightly getting back into it, but
I don't now because, again, it has changed like everything else. And I'm not saying I'm not cutting it down today because times are different. But back in the day, when I first got into it, I was a ring announcer. I was a fan, and a friend of mine was, hey, our ring announcer got sick. Will you come and do it? So I didn't know how to behave. So those guys, we'd ride in the same car. I was neutral, but there's two good guys would go to a restaurant in a small town. They'd sit at the counter. 5 minutes later, the bad guys would come in and sit at a table. They wouldn't talk to each other. We'd leave it stuff there. I could sit with either one because I'm the ring announcer. I was in between. And they got in the car, and it was this whole big production. And I said, why are you doing that? She said, because in the old days, if they found out, hey, the wrestling match is in a small town, those guys were talking to each other at the restaurant, and then they're supposed to hate each other in the ring. They're protecting the business.
It's kayfabe.
It's a real kayfabe, yeah. And kayfabe is long dead. But I'm telling you, it was a business and a craft and everything else. And I just got to come up, like, as long as I've been a comedian, I've been around wrestling. I have so much respect for it because the guys that are the best, the bad guys in the ring, you leave your dog and your kids with, they're great. Mr. America, that's the molester. Stay away from him.
Yeah.
And it's just
same. If you know hockey, I played a little hockey. The toughest, most bad people you don't want to,
Ty Domi.
They're the ones who are at a children's hospital every weekend. They are the sweethearts who, overtip it. I mean, just the best of the best. Those people, because they came up the hard way. They really know what stuff's about. Yeah.
Yeah. Wrestling is just, again, this is all a people business. Comedy is too, and the funny people that are cocky will not get as much work as the nice people that are And that's so frustrating to most comics. But you got to have the people skills along with the funny. Funny is a small part of it, and I wish that wasn't true. I'm not saying I like it that way, but it is true.
It's the same. Not to bring them up again, but my boss and the owner of my company, they both said the same thing to me. As a salesman, you need to sell yourself first before you can sell anything. I can't sell a tool if somebody doesn't like me. They're not going to buy anything off me. Same thing with comedy. I'm not going to get a spot if somebody thinks I'm an asshole.
Sure.
So, yeah.
And now, especially, there's so few spots. There's fewer spots than ever before. I used to be able to work every week of the year. Maybe not the greatest work, but if I really wanted to get out, and I did, I would work somewhere. I might have to drive a little farther. I might have to take a little less pay somewhere, but I could work. Now, ageism becomes a threat, but I can't work every week. I just can't. It's not out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true.
I mean, that's the thing that we're lucky about here, Dobie, is the guy. It's the same thing. So, like I already said, Tony V opened for Bill Burr at Fenway Park, 35,000 people. But he also talks about it all the time. Like, he was the host opening night of the Boston Comedy Festival on a Monday night. He also, has it in his act where he has this thing about, getting a call from a booker. Hey, can you go? And he names a place in northern Maine at like a VFW hall. And he's like, do you need the address? And so he's like, no, this will be my 6th show there, but he does. He's a guy who, I've seen him at just in the last 3 months at huge shows on huge stages with hundreds of people in there, and I've seen him on stages with 30 people in the room. And I'll tell you, you get the same level of entertainment whatever room he's in. But here, if you're willing to drive 2 or 3 hours, those guys every Tuesday, and if you follow them on social media, every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and mostly Sunday, they're somewhere working. So we're just spoiled because where we live in the New England area, between Providence and Hartford and, Springfield, Mass. I mean, I'm not even talking New York City or Boston, but there are 15 cities that support AA baseball teams, like that
Wonderful.
Level city, where it's a couple 100,000 people, and there's great venues. If you're willing to drive a couple hours, you can make a decent living as a working comic in this region.
That used to be everywhere, but it's only there. Here's a guy, I'm going to mention her name if I didn't before. His name is Jaques Lynch. He's a Boston comic, now lives in Maine.
I've worked with Jack 3 times in the last few months, and I haven't ever walked out without the sides hurting.
One of the sweetest human
hurting.
beings, funniest human beings. We worked together one time in Nashville, Tennessee, probably 20 years ago. The only time we've ever worked together. And we stayed in contact because he's just such a great soul. He should be a guest on your podcast because he can tell you from the New England standpoint because he's a New England comic.
No, he's a real sweetheart. He's a so like Wayne at the Roundabout, because he lives close to this place, the Roundabout in Portsmouth, and Jim McHugh always is like, he's not in the lineup, but every time I host, he's like, hey, just get ready to do a little if Lynchy walks in, because the 12-minute guy becomes a 10-minute guy, the 15-minute guy, because you open up 10 minutes for Jack Lynch anytime he walks in a room.
And he's such a good dude that you wanna be around him, and he's a helper and just a good guy, and can't say enough good things about him. So if you like Driscoll, Wayne, and I'm glad I sent Driscoll your way. He lived in Boston for a while. Jack Lynch is up in Driscoll's league.
I'll hit him up. I love that.
Beautiful.
That's great.
What else can I do for you guys? Anybody watching this, reach out. I don't claim to know everything. I don't think I'm anything better than you. I'm just ahead of you on the journey. Now, Wayne, I think I sent you and Anthony some of my articles last time. Did I do that? I think
you did. Yeah, you did.
I'm updating those and trying to make it so I will send you guys copies. If you feel free to pass them out to anybody that asks for them. I don't care if they flush them down the toilet. That knowledge is there. It's out there. I want to pass it out, so when I'm in hell, I'll have a little shot glass of cold water saying I helped somebody when I was walking in.
I'll say it again too. I mentioned it last time, but your Facebook group has been incredible. Like the posts that you put up there, they're very lengthy, well thought out. I say lengthy, not in a bad way, but they're very well thought out. And if you're a comic listening to this and you're not in the Maxwell Method of Comedy Facebook group, you need to be.
I'm joining it now.
Thanks,
there you go.
Yeah. All right. What else you got? Anytime you guys are open, you have a fallout, I can help you. Reach out. I'm here.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'll definitely be hitting you up because we do, like, I wasn't kidding. We have a list of things. We're like, well, we should have Dobie on and talk about this and this and that. The wrestling thing I really want to do because I've started to get back into wrestling a little bit, and I think Lloyd and me and you, we can leave Anthony out of it because he doesn't care about wrestling.
That's okay.
But we can talk about that. That'll be fun. So the Dry Bar special, do you have a date on when that's going to come out?
No, they're going to do a first edit. They said I did it March 16th, and as we're recording this, it is the end of April. So they haven't yet. They said they will. I'll keep you posted. And then I got to name it. That's like, okay. So there's 16 guys that did this thing, and it's like you got to name it. So if somebody's going through the list, it has to stand out. I don't know what to name it. So
with that, I have to name this episode. So if you have one that you're like, I like that, but I'm definitely not going to use that, send it to me. I'll use that as the episode name.
Got it.
No, the name episode, he already said it. The J is for genius.
Oh, my God.
Okay, that's it. Bingo. Thank you.
You're a genius. I'm going to use that. Yeah, so let me know when the Dry Bar special is going to come out. I'm going to
definitely will. It'll be in the group.
Thank you so much for coming on again. And
good luck to you guys. All I ask, when anybody gets famous, just let me drive your limo. That's all I ask. I'm paying.
You'll be in the back with me. We'll be popping champagne.
That's all right. Okay, you got it, bud.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Nice meeting you, Jack.
Anything that you want to?
Nice meeting you, Dobie. Fantastic. I'm a fan.
We'll be in touch.
Do you have anything coming up that you want to plug before we go?
Let me think.
Oh, I think he backed out.
He signed off.
Well, fuck it, everybody. This has been a wonderful step in the quest for laughs. Thank you very much, Dobie. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Wayne. See you guys later.
Have a great night. Bye.
They think I'm hot shit. I'm not even room temperature shit.